It's that time again. The Rochford Files come to you from the Mile Highland City. It's the host that's kind of between the coast. He is Andrew Rochford. And once again, I just happened to stumble into doing another show on Friday. I'll just say that yesterday, after coming home, I wasn't really feeling the doing the show because I did have most of this planned for last night. A couple things that developed today, but hopefully, for those of you who are fortunate enough, you're getting to enjoy a 3-day weekend. But I also understand that in this capitalist hellscape that we live in, that it's not really that way for as many of us as it should be. But now some nice warm weather, going into a longer weekend here, as this has been quite the week. Plenty of moments that should be breaking through the good old cognitive dissonance of liberals, but as we know, it's often a very selective memory, and many of these things don't break through, especially to liberals long term. So it's going to be a lot more stuff that developed with this Texas school shooting that happened earlier in the week, and some of the details that shock and blow the minds of liberals. But for people who are in the know already, this shit isn't as shocking to us. But let's start off here, shall we? And we'll start off with the more mundane stuff, in my opinion, and that includes this Ted Cruz. So it was even to the point where, for the guy who hardly ever talks about Republicans, Jimmy Dore, he even did a little segment on Ted Cruz in his live stream earlier today.
There are 19 sets of parents who are never going to get to kiss their child goodnight again.
Is this the moment to reform gun laws?
You know, it's easy to go to politics.
But it's important. It's at the heart of the issue.
I get that that's where the media likes to go.
No, it's not. It's where many of the people we've talked to here like to go.
The proposals from Democrats in the media, inevitably, when some violent psychopath murders people.
A violent psychopath who's able to get a weapon so easily. 18-year-old with 2 AR-15s.
If you want to stop violent crime, the proposals the Democrats have, none of them would have stopped this.
But why does this only happen in your country? I really think that's what many people around the world they cannot fathom. Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism so awful?
You know, I'm sorry you think American exceptionalism is awful.
I think this aspect of it.
You got your political agenda.
No, it's honestly,
God love you.
Senator, it's not. I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
It is just an American problem, sir.
Mr. Cruz, why is America the only country that faces this kind of
You know what?
mass shooting?
But you
This
can't answer
kind
that.
of
You can't answer that,
politicization.
can you, sir? You can't answer that. Why is this
Why
country?
is it that people come from all over the world to America? Because it's the freest, most prosperous, safest
So why
country
are
on
It
our
may
earth.
kids
be the,
dying in
and
it
school?
may
stop
be the
being a
freest. It may be
propaganda.
the most
Why are our
popular.
kids dying in school?
They're 19 sets of parents.
This is how much the fucking brain rot of American exceptionalism permeates in the brains. Hey, WCSN. What's up, man? How much the brain rot of American exceptionalism rots in the brains of people that Ted Cruz seriously has the audacity to suggest that someone who disagrees with his belief system or the talking points that he's espousing is calling people who challenge his beliefs propagandist. Wow. That's how much that, how absurd that is. That we got the propagandist and the highly propagandized in many aspects. They call the people who criticize those beliefs the propagandist. And as you saw, another big theme in that interview, that little clip right there, is him evading many of the important answers. And that even though Democrats, he probably isn't completely wrong on the Democratic proposals not really being able to solve the issue. Yeah. Yeah, I noticed. But yes, he probably isn't completely wrong on that part, because when this whole aggressive gun control that you only talk about uh, liberals pushing, those do not solve the greater issue at hand. And that's the capitalist system that causes people to get to the point where they feel like they have to shoot up schools. Even though, yes, even if we do get to our socialist society, there will still be someone once in a while that is going to feel like they have to perform a mass shooting. But taking care of those basic needs are going to go a much longer way to preventing people from doing these shootings, as opposed to just trying to make sure that the guns are out of the hands. The aggressive gun control is really just going to make it harder for the poor and marginalized communities to be in a position to protect themselves. And the fact that when it comes down to it, this two-party system is really designed to put forward juxtapositions which ultimately get you nowhere and continue the typical cycle of mass shootings where people get outraged for a couple days, gun control becomes a debate, then ultimately both parties have these ridiculous solutions that don't really do anything to solve the issue that ultimately causes people to want to shoot perform mass shootings and just push forward mostly non-solutions. I mean, I've said that there's probably small stuff that can be done that really isn't going to affect the access to gun ownership for poor and marginalized communities. Small, reasonable stuff that even many of the liberals cry about not being quite good enough. But when it comes down to it, it is the small, reasonable steps that could be better than this whole crazed cry for the aggressive, radical gun control examples that they like to point to in like Australia or Japan. But we know that that ultimately is not going to take guns out of the hands of the people that liberals think it will, like your conservative neighbors. When in reality, your responsible conservative gun owning neighbor here is not the problem when it comes to the issues of gun culture. It is the crazed propagandist who actually do more to cause the rift and divide on the gun fetishization that we have in the United States. And now we're going to shift gears into this Beto O'Rourke and having his moment a couple days ago. About to show you why it's not exactly this great moment that a lot of people think it is.
No. The next shooting is right now, and you're doing nothing. No, he needs to get his ass out of here. This isn't the place to talk this over. This is totally predictable. Sir, you're out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Please leave this auditorium. I can't believe you're a sick son of a bitch that would come to a deal like this to make a political issue. It's on assholes like you. Why don't you get out of here?
Let me address this first core issue at hand that a lot of conservatives like to throughout the whole bullshit politicalization argument to evade addressing these issues hand on, because it's just a bullshit, cowardly tactic of a smoke and mirrors to avoid doing anything. And even if I disagree with the way that you're going about addressing the problem, I'd much rather have someone who is willing to push forward some type of action, even if it's one that I disagree with, because at least you're in a better place, in my opinion, if you're willing to take some form of action. So that's why, and I say this as someone who does not think it's disrespectful to families if your heart is in the place of wanting to take action, because there's a lot of families out there who have lost family members due to mass shootings that wish someone would have politicized this issue much sooner and made it to a point to make sure that they didn't become that their family and friends did not become part of the next mass shooting. I thought there was another instance where Beto did jump on top of a table, and I think it was in a different situation. Kelly, nice to see you're here as well. But the thing is, let's be real here. It is definitely very deranged of those Texas state Republicans to have such a visceral reaction to someone who just wanted to challenge him and hold him accountable. And I say that as Beto O'Rourke being one of the absolutely worst people for that moment to hold those damn Republicans accountable as well. Because we know what Beto is. He's already been pigeonholed as the crazed gun control freak. And that's why the first two times around, he hasn't been able to break through. He tried to beat Ted, and that's why he couldn't beat Ted Cruz, and that's why he will lose to Greg Abbott. Just on that alone, when you come forward as the crazed gun control liberal in a state where having that type of stance makes it a deterrent to your path to victory, that's why Beto O'Rourke will not win. And now back to the scene describing it, because that feels like a lot like a random wrestling promo where Beto is the annoying, is someone who's a baby face who has that X-Pac type heat. For those of you who don't know what X-Pac heat is, it's what it's called when a wrestling company tries to force you to like a baby face, and every effort that they make to try to force you to like them more, it only causes the fans to boo them. And that's the type of visceral reaction that a Beto O'Rourke gets whenever he tries to uh, do these type of performative stunts. And and this is like creative, which is their DNC is like the baby face creative, and their takeaway is, oh, he isn't screaming loud enough. He has to get more fiery. And what we know about a guy like Beto is when you try to turn the volume up on the performative screaming anger, it's only going to turn more people away from a guy like that. And that's why he was one of the worst people for that moment. Now, even if you have a regular person who shares similar beliefs, they're still going to be a bit more endearing to the average person as opposed to a politician who has established that they're not going to change for the better. And that's why, in the moment like that, a liberal who is only going to be going in hard in the paint on gun control is only going to find themselves sputtering their wheels in the mud. Hey, Yipper 99. But the point is, when you look at the other uh, candidate that should be getting a lot more attention in this Texas governor race, Delilah Barrios, is that if she was able to walk in, oh, hey, Lucky Burrito, that we know that Delilah has the actual nuance to a multi-pronged uh, way of addressing this mass shooting issue, that they would actually sound far more reasonable to the Texan who has been propagandized into such a strong anti-gun control stance. But that's the thing that you're not going to get from an over-the-top performative uh, guy like Beto. And that's just really the ultimate problem here. Let's see what. Although, if you want to, if you thought Ted Cruz was terrible in his tweet on uh, after the shooting, wait till you see what Neera Tanden had said on this whole gun control. It's impossible to keep people safe in a system where where police are outgunned by murderers. That deserves an endless multitude of clown emojis. Neera Tanden hasn't been a. She stood a lot more quiet uh, over the past few months, but she really showed her ass on that one because it was dead obvious that police were capable of outgunning this shooter on earlier this week, but like fucking cowards, they stood on the outside and prevented unarmed people who had more courage and the willingness to step into that school to try to save people. And if you wanted to know how you can effectively be worse, uh, I thought that was the original position she got rejected for, Kelly. And I'm sorry that you got more Nero, but this was so bad that you had to point it out because this was way worse than Ted Cruz or Joe Biden worshipping pathetic police. And we got to go to the video next of how it showed the examples of these Uvalde police blocking parents from trying to take action. So we got the going to pull up that thread. Which It's from Matt Novak. So I'm not sure if I'm going to play much of this with audio or not. Yeah, exactly, Kelly. Exactly. Fortunately, WCSN, this is the exact type of shit that is done by design. As you can see here, this was the first of, I think, there's a couple more videos here in this thread, and it's important to point out what this looks like to me. See, when the police show this level of cowardice, which, by the way, if you're acting like this is a unique situation to just this police department, then you're still not fully there. This could happen any fucking where in this country. The level of cowardice, it's an embarrassment because they're like a football team where the offense and is like just kneeling on all three plays. Then what makes it worse is they don't even fucking punt on fourth down. They take the knee on fourth down as well. They give the equivalent of the shooter perfect field position already in the red zone. Because when you decide to lock the shooter in a classroom full of children only to fucking help that shooter and aid them into killing more students, that's like giving them a free pass to the red zone instantly. Oh, that was full videos on YouTube, but this just shows you the lack of testicular fortitude. The 100 wife said it. They all civil tanks and way more firepower and earned qualified immunity. That's right. There's only 2 states that have even just done the small task of getting rid of qualified immunity. And that's all. Those are only a couple of the positive things that we could point to as actual policy that got done from the George Floyd protest a couple years ago. And those two states are Colorado, which did it during the George Floyd protest, and New Mexico, which did it like, I believe, 3 or 4 months after those protests ended. But let's get back to the point I was starting. These fucking scumbags lack the testicular fortitude to go into a school and go stop the shooting. It disgusts me. They have the weapons to go in there and save more lives. And they decided to make a fucking business decision to stay on the outside, block brave parents who are willing to go in there unarmed and actually try to save children. And the only time that any of those officers or Border Patrol agents wanted to go in there was to protect their own children. And when you look at this, yes, that's a good one. Even though the spelling's a bit mixed up, lofts. And shout out to Mick Foley for making the phrase lack of testicular fortitude a big thing. But let's not pretend like this is some unique occurrence, because there are still liberals out there who think this is a big, shocking revelation. And that's because they have such a short-term memory with this stuff. And they may hold this into their memory bank for a few months, maybe even a year, but they completely conveniently leave this out when it comes time to hold politicians accountable. Says Yipper, society is allowing black people to be used as target practice for appreciation, and this is what they show for it. Revoke their privilege. Yeah, that's right, because we know that by design, they are absolutely more than capable of stepping in and being protective, and they do it for when there's people who are willing to challenge the elite and their property. They are more than capable of stepping up and being able to have that protective instinct kick in. But when it comes to school shootings, they're the biggest pussies around. And they block people who are more brave, that are willing to risk their life without the proper protection to step up. And this also takes me into, I think I'll get to the next thing I'd like to share on this before I get into my next point. And that is coming from, where is it? Oh yeah, it's right here. So this is excerpt of an article shared by Megan Menchaca. Residents here expressed anger and frustration Thursday about the time it took for law enforcement to end an elementary school shooting in which 19 children and 2 teachers died. I think that don't really need to read that more. The police were doing nothing, said Angeli Rose Gomez, who, after learning about the shooting 40 miles to Robb Elementary, where children are in 2nd and 3rd grade, they were just standing outside the fence. They weren't going in there or running anywhere. State officials have said that. Oh yeah, this was the point I wanted to get into here, was the fact that there was this one woman who did get temporarily cuffed by these sack of shits for a police state that we have, but then after they let her get uncuffed, she was able to jump the fence and go in there and save her children, just to illustrate how sad of a scene that took place on that day. And the fact that, in addition to all the details that unfolded here, I'm going to make this point clear. If after all that you've seen unfold with the details that came out from this case, not only the fact that the police decided to stand around for an hour like a bunch of cowardly pussies, then in addition to the fact, when they finally decided to go in, they actually caused a couple more students to get killed. And some of that was by their bad decision making by one of them to ask for someone to scream for help, and that only signaled the kid to make that kid more of an obvious target. But the point is, after all that, if you're still going to come out against defund police, then you're not ever going to be serious about addressing the problem with gun violence in the United States. Defund the police is the moderate position. And if you're not there, then you're much closer to the right-wingers who still bootlick and do crazy-ass gymnastics for the fucking police state that we have in existence in this country. That's right. Defund the police is the moderate position. And that's why we can't let some of these white progressives still do obfuscation over the slogan anymore. Like your Kyle Kolinskis, your crystal ball types who if they're still getting caught up in the slogan, that should expose how deeply unserious that they are about their talk about improving policing in the United States. Oh, yes, that was Kelly. That was another one of those things that was absolutely sickening about this was the fact that that 10-year-old girl had to try to find some blood to put on her to help sell the fact that she looked dead in order to survive. Oh yeah, WCSN. I you did bring me to another thing. I did notice even though Occupy Democrats happens to post a lot of garbage when it comes to their tweets, they actually did point out something that I didn't see. And that was the fact that this pathetic excuse of the moment, but not the exception by any means, they are actually calling for other police departments to provide assistance and protection. Remember, police are the ones who have their own protection already. And they're supposed to be the ones who protect the unarmed. But they can't handle people getting mad at them because they're not doing the job that they're supposed to be doing. Just like in the same way that whenever you challenge the power structure in any way, their first step is to cower and demand more security. Even the ones who are supposed to be able to secure them fucking selves. It's sad, isn't it? And these fucking scum want to cry about the fact that they feared their life. And they're the ones with weapons. And they always are making it about themselves. It's about me getting home. Me, the guy with the gun, getting home to their family. No, it's about making the public as a whole being able to get home to their family. If that's how you keep, if you're trying to maintain the farce of the propaganda, that's how it would be. Truth is, that's really not how it works. And that's why they made that business decision to protect themselves first and foremost, and only selectively grab their children. But now it's time to point out a couple of those liberal personalities who actually got shocked. No, I'm going, not quite yet. You gotta go to Jason Whitlock first. And look at what this bootlicker says. And for those of you who don't know, that Jason Whitlock is one of those sports personalities who, in order to help himself stand out in the sports world, he started to become a big right-winger, especially as he moved to Fox Sports. And he now is, I think he does a lot of shows with like Clay Travis and stuff. I'm not defending the actions of the officers, but we've demonized law enforcement to the point that there are fewer rewards for being a hero, for taking risk. When your culture makes George Floyd the hero, real heroes stand down. Cultural rot has consequences. No. Once again, the right. This has always been one of the most bullshit interpretations that the right has had over the George Floyd situation. No reasonable person has tried to make George Floyd a hero. It's just that we don't allow character assassination to be a justification for someone dying. And that's something that the right likes to do a lot, is they're willing to use character assassination as justification for death. And that's morally bankrupt as far as I'm concerned. And no reasonable person has tried to make George Floyd a hero. We make the point of when the police are in a situation where they go over the lie and take the life of a black person, they don't take your character into account. If they want to do it, they absolutely will do it. Because if he were even fair weather on the idea of character, then you would have been upset when they killed Elijah McClain. But since the character assassinating right doesn't have any type of principle when it comes to the idea of character, they just decided to demonize him for wearing a hoodie at night in the summer because he is someone that runs cold. And think about all the jobs where in this country where the working class have to eat shit and do something for someone who complains anyway. Because if you've ever worked retail, there will come a point where some manager is going to tell you you have to suck it up and do something for an angry customer punching down on you, even if they made you angry, they made you upset. Because retail management often makes you have to throw your pride aside and do something for someone who isn't exactly deserving of it. And why is it that there's certain professions in society like politicians, police, billionaires? Why is it that we have to put our pride aside and not go too hard on them? Why are they the only ones that are afforded the idea of not being able to get away with not doing things for people that they don't like or people who made their feelings upset? Do you think firemen, if someone's upset at the fact that their home is on fire for whatever the reason is, do you think for a fireman that it be a justifiable reaction if someone's upset at the fact that the fire is happening, then they get to take their hose and go home? No. Do you think if a paramedic or a doctor who deals with an angry patient, do you think it's a justifiable response if they decide since they're angry because their patient or some family member of the patient is upset at them, do you think it's a reasonable reaction for them to walk away and not take care of the problem at hand? Fuck no, it's not. And that's what's happened way too often. And there's too many people that run cover for this. And this current police system should be demonized to death until people realize that these are the type of systems in place that need to be taken down. Because abolition of police does not mean absence of police. It means putting a police system in place that actually works for people. Because right now, this current police state only works for the elite and their property. Then, for everyone else, it's only when they feel like it. There's a bit more to it. I thought that there was another tweet to this. I guess it was just a single tweet, but the point is, these arguments which are made on the basis of character assassination, and if you hurt the psyche of a powerful person too much, then they're in the right to not do things for you. It's absolute utter nonsense. And that even extends to that extends to liberals as well. So it's not just the right that is guilty of making these character assassination based arguments. We've seen this a lot with liberals, with the way that they strawmanned anyone who was Bernie Sanders support. Need I go into examples of Bernie bros, calling them just like the McCarthyite smears of calling Bernie supporters just like Trump? And you even see this with your progressive media as well. Like, Kyle Kulinski is a common example of this. For example, last year I remember following that Medicare for All march when Kobe Azule had that video of him discussing his interaction with Cori Bush at that Washington, D.C. Medicare for All march. And Kyle included that in his video while giving the slap on the wrist type criticism to Cori Bush, but actually punched much harder at Kobe for the way that he felt in the moment with the way that Cori Bush was at that time. And Kyle also, he's done that plenty of times. And that's also a common theme, a lot of like Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, Sam Piker. So just know that the character assassination based arguments, even as you go further left, the characterization is probably less overt, but it's still a thing that is definitely pervasive just beyond the right. Now we'll go into a couple of those top liberal commentators and their reactions to the news of what the Uvalde police and border patrol agents did on Tuesday. And first we go to Chris Hayes, the most left person, the second most left person that they allow on mainstream media. The first one would probably be Mehdi Hassan. And please, please, please tell me the local police set up a cordon outside the school for 40 minutes while the gunman inside was murdering children. I refuse to believe this is what happened. I think we're missing something. See, Jesus. Chris Hayes sounds just like that religious woman from The Simpsons. And how many years have you been in this game, Chris? And you're acting like this is just something that happened a couple of days ago. And how much of a selective memory that even the propagandists have when it comes to these mass shootings in this country. And this is supposed to be one of the more left leaning, I'm not going to say left, but this is like the left part of the mainstream media flank that we have here. And with that being said, the left flank of mainstream media is still somewhat right wing in comparison to the people. And look at JB Font. He had one of the best replies to this. I hope he, shout out to JB. I hope he is recovering well in the hospital today after a tough day with his dialysis today. So, solidarity to you, JB. And here's his tweet. Chris, you need to see what many of us who are black and poor see. The police do nothing for us. They exist to merely protect capital and the property of the wealthy. The system of the police is basically private security paid for by the municipalities and the states for their oligarchs. And he nailed it on that point. And I think that he managed to get one of the best replies on this tweet here. But imagine how ignorant and a useful tool of the corporate oligarchy you have to be this dumb. But he still isn't as bad as other people. Yes, hope he is doing well. As this corporate media, this guy's the most spineless of them all. If you know who I'm talking about. Brian Stelter, the man who is 36 and going on 57. The confusion about the Uvalde attack timeline will make it even harder to find any common ground. Some people will stick with the original facts, others will believe the new info, others will tune it out, others will disbelieve it all. How many times is Brian Stelter gonna reaffirm himself as the most spineless corporate media personality that we have in all the media? This is pathetic, man. It is not. Well, yeah, this could be a word salad for him, but there's people who also have such a word salad that it becomes extremely normal. And I think that it's kind of hard though. Because if you say stuff like this so normally, is it really word salad? And it flows so naturally in a bad way. I mean, if you're saying stuff that you clearly do not know you're saying, that you're not used to saying, then I don't think that's a. I do think that's a really strong word salad. But for Ryan Stelter, this is so on brand that, and he's probably so rehearsed in this type of lapdogging for politicians and the state that this is normal for him. And it's pretty damn awful because when you're a journalist, you're supposed to hold these institutions to account, not make friends with them, not run cover for them. You're supposed to hold the powerful accountable as a journalist. And I'd much rather see journalists hold institutions like the police accountable on stuff, even if it doesn't end up being correct. Because the accountability factor and challenging powerful people is more important to me than whether you're correct or not. And this is, once again, the sad state of journalism is the people who actually want to hold the institution, the high, powerful institutions, and the elite that have rigged the institutions in their favor accountable is the fact that those who really want to do that are the ones that get deplatformed, they get crushed by the algorithm, they're in jail, they're prisoners like Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, Mumia Abu Jamal, among many others. And they're the ones who are getting shit more right. While you get to lie to death. Doesn't matter whether you're a liberal or conservative media personality, you get to throw out so many lies that the average person can't even untangle the web of lies that you've created. But when you have a record of integrity of truth, you could be in a position where you're trying to get tried for espionage and put in prison for 175 years. That's how sick and wretched the state of journalism is in the United States, that you have with this YouTube, you have YouTube CEOs telling us that these are free spaces for us. When the truth is, if this were free spaces, many of us would be much bigger than what we are. As I point out the examples of how some of these smaller people who haven't cleared that six-figure range yet, like Revolutionary Blackout Network, Heartlands Media, among many others. Think about how many more platforms would have 100 plus K platforms. And that's why we're in a state of other absurdity with people being dominated by propaganda in the most propagandized country in the whole entire world. All right, now this is a good point to go to something that's a bit different. So, a couple of days ago, the writer of Abbott Elementary, it's a new show on ABC, and started to get a lot of people requesting for an episode to be written about a gun shooting. So this is Quinta Brunson. She is the main writer, and this is actually one of the few shows that have an all blacks writing staff, from what I've learned. And this is the tweet that she made. Wild, how many people have asked for a school shooting episode of the show I write? People are that deeply removed from demanding more from the politicians they've elected and are instead demanding entertainment. I can't ask, are y'all okay anymore? Because the answer is no. And this is a major problem with the white entitlement that we have in the society. And it's also been set up by many of the previous iterations of black TV shows, especially Blackish, because it felt like that show had a episode for everything bad that just happened in the time frame that show was around. And it's definitely a sad type of mentality when you have the audacity to tell black people to demand stuff from them. And this is also goes along the lines of thinking that you don't have to, the white people who want to be white saviors, but at the same time, they don't want anything to do with talking to their racist family members or their racist family members' friends. For some reason, they think they absolve themselves from doing their part in trying to help undo the ills of racism in this country. And if you're one of these people who have the audacity to demand a writer for a show like Abbott Elementary to do a episode on a school shooting, you're fucking sick. Because look at all the white based TV we have where they don't have to tackle tough subjects like this whatsoever. They're allowed to have those safe escape from the world type of entertainment. But what we've seen with black shows is they often have to have the elements of capitalism put in them. And they always have to have some element of black trauma in it as well. And I know this, and you don't realize it at first. Because a lot of these shows can be good shows, like uh, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but Family Matters, which ultimately a big theme of that show was propaganda. And several others are about like the grind or the struggle. And it always puts the constantly throws black trauma at you. But when it comes to a show like Abbott Elementary, you don't always have to have black entertainment be based in trauma. You can have a show where it's just a feel good getaway from the problems that we face in society. And I noticed one notable quote tweet came from some white guy who classifies himself as a white communist. I didn't take the time to pull up the tweet, but the point is, this type of entitlement mentality can even come from those of the white people who even are on the left too. And that's a major problem that we have is this white racism transcends the whole political ideology. And there's a lot of white leftists who will just stay silent on that. And they won't, they'll let it slide. Just know that if you're not willing to speak up against racism, even if it happens with people who are even pretty ideologically aligned with you, then that's not going to be endearing to black people, brown people, other marginalized communities. And this is also going to be the stuff that liberals use to McCarthyite smear socialist and communist. Especially, they'll even do it to the marginalized ones as well. And it's definitely a big issue because the white privilege, white entitlement mentality, it takes various forms. And even if your entitlement only gets exposed in trying to demand people take stances on social issues, then you're no better than the ones who, even if you're criticizing the liberal white saviors in the process, because even though we should want as many people as possible to be in the fight for liberation, we can't force people to do it, even if they're part of these marginalized communities. They have to be able to make these decisions on their own. Just like I'm sure a lot of white people over these past few years have finally started to see the light and are willing to make to join in this fight for equality and liberation. And these instances are great examples of why it's better to just sit back and let other people get blown up by the racism landmines. And this one really exposed a lot of people. I know that in the thumbnail that I had Colin Kaepernick planned for that, for the end there, but there really isn't that much to say. He just finally got a tryout practice with the Las Vegas Raiders. They said it looked good, nothing was in it. So that's the short version of something that I could have drawn out by a few more minutes. But I think it's more important to go to something that just developed today. And this came from San Francisco Giants manager Gabe Kapler. And he's actually making a stronger statement than 95% of white athletes. Let's just say 98, 97% of white professional athletes. Shared the wrong tab. Let me get the right one up. I wasn't quite ready for that. Here it is. So let's, he published an essay on Friday. And this is to his reaction to the shooting that took place. Oh, and it jumped me over to a new tab. Yeah, I've noticed. Yes, I noticed that more recently, Yipper. I think that was part of the thing that kind of coincided with Jay-Z getting more involved with the NFL is the fact that they're trying to win people back over by featuring more like hip hop and rap, especially during the Super Bowl, compared to in the past where you mainly just got like rock and the occasional R&B act. Okay, here's the essay in full by Giants manager Gabe Kapler. The day 19 children and 2 teachers were murdered, we held a moment of silence and sporting events around the country. Then we played the national anthem, and we went on with our lives. Players, staff, and fans stood for the moment of silence, grieving the lives lost, and then we, myself included, continued to stand, proudly proclaiming ourselves the land of the free and the home of the brave. We didn't stop to reflect on what we are actually free and brave after this horrific event. We just stood attention. When I was the same age as the children in Uvalde, my father taught me to stand for the Pledge of the Allegiance when I believed my country was representing its people well, or to protest and stay seated when it wasn't. I don't believe it is representing us well right now. This particular time, an 18-year-old walked into a store, brought multiple assault rifles and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, walked into a school with an armed resource officer and its own police district, and was able to murder children for nearly an hour. Parents begged and pleaded with police officers to do something. Police officers who had weapons and who received nearly 40% of the city's funding as their children were being murdered. We elect our politicians to represent our interest. Immediately following this shooting, we were told we needed locked doors and armed teachers. We are given thoughts and prayers. We were told it could have been worse and we just need love. But we weren't given bravery and we aren't free. The police on the scene put a mother in handcuffs as she begged them to go in and save her children. They blocked parents trying to organize to charge in to stop the shooter, including a father who learned his daughter was murdered while he argued with the cops. We aren't free when politicians decide that the lobbyists and gun industries are more important than our children's freedom to go to school without needing bulletproof backpacks and active shooter drills. I'm often stuck between our games by the lack of delivery of the promise of what our national anthem represents. We stand in honor of a country when we elect representatives to serve us, to thoughtfully consider and enact legislation that protects the interests of all the people in this country and to move this country forward towards the vision of the shining city on the hill. But instead, we thoughtlessly link our moment of silence and grief with an equally thoughtless display of celebration for a country that refuses to take up the concept of controlling the sale of weapons used nearly exclusively for the mass slaughter of human beings. We have our moment over and over, and then we move on without demanding real change from the people we empower to make these changes. We stand, we bow our heads, and the people in power leave on recess, celebrating their own patriotism at every turn. Every time I place my hand over my heart and remove my hat, I'm participating in a self congratulatory glorification of the only country where these mass shootings take place. On Wednesday, I walked out onto the field. I listened to the announcement as we honored the victims in Uvalde. I bowed my head. I stood for the national anthem. Metallica riffed on City Connect guitars. My brain said to drop a knee. My body didn't listen. I wanted to walk back inside. Instead, I froze. I felt like a coward. I didn't want to call attention to myself. I didn't want to take away from the victims or their families. There was a baseball game, a rock band, the lights, the pageantry. I knew that thousands of people were using this game to escape the horrors of the world for just a little bit. I knew that thousands more wouldn't understand the gesture and would take it as an offense to the military, to the veterans, to themselves. But I'm not okay with the state of this country. I wish I hadn't let my discomfort compromise my integrity. I wish I could have demonstrated what I learned from my dad, that when you're dissatisfied with your country, you let it be known through protest. The home of the brave should encourage this. And that was another pretty strong statement from a Bay Area sports coach. And he at least admitted his faults of not being able to make his dissent known in that moment when he took the field uh, to stand on the field before that game. But his response to that is he's going to make this statement now. He told reporters in Cincinnati that he doesn't plan on coming out for the national anthem, and that will be his plan going forward until I feel better about the direction of this country. All right, Gabe, I'm going to leave you with the same message that I left with Steve Kerr. And fortunately, if you continue to just go about your day as planned, and that even if you decide to not be on the field anymore for the national anthem, or even if you decide to take a knee daily instead, that just doing that alone is not going to help bring the change that we need in order to help people's material conditions get met, in order to not feel like they have to do things like commit violent crime. Because we can point to a lot of moments in the United States where a lot of it had to do with someone wanting to commit an act of a violent crime here. And Gabe, if you want to be the change you want to enact, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told Steve Kerr. You got to go in that locker room and you got to convince your team to strike. Because with the structure of society that we have here, specifically one where the people are entitled, feel a sense of entitlement to their entertainment, you got to take away the entertainment aspect of the society, because if the people get their entertainment taken away, it could be the first step in upsetting the structure of society enough to where it can lead more people to follow suit and take action. So that's why you could be Gabe Kapler. You could be more than just a guy who can take the right performative stance when it comes to dissent for the national anthem. I don't I'm not going to say I I'm saying that's fine if you want to make that statement. But if you want to make a stronger statement than letting people know your dissent of this country, which is has an extremely problematic mentality with American exceptionalism, nationalism, which often gets conflated with patriotism, you can do more than that. You could make up for the opportunity that Steve Kerr failed to capitalize on, and that is convincing your team to go on strike, because San Francisco, it's supposed to be known as one of the progressive capitals of the world. So it would be very fitting if a team from San Francisco was the one who restarted the sports strike. Then, even though you're not in the heart of high level playoff competition, you still have the chance to extend, get the influence started on your side, Gabe Kapler. I'm telling you that if you want serious change, you can make a far greater impact by just not being on the field for the national anthem. And you could do it you could potentially do it in a much shorter amount of time. If you take away the current new and live entertainment from the American people, then that may just make enough people angry enough to get back on these streets and make the demands that they should have made 2+ years ago when Barack Obama stepped in and killed that strike. Because if you had the conviction to stand up to a powerful neoliberal ghoul like Obama and all those NBA players who allowed themselves to be placated by allowing their arenas to be used one time for extra polling sites just to get Donald Trump out, and nothing else changed. This is a moment of redemption. And if someone in the sports world has the courage to push for it again, even if you're not asking for the right things, I know a ton of activists who, just like in the George Floyd protest, who are trying to push for different demands, like defund the police, they'll bring those demands out to the forefront again, specifically the ones that will address the more material needs that need to be taken care of to make sure people do not feel the need to commit crime, coupling that with a serious look at defunding police and hopefully convincing people from that moderate position how the road to abolition will make far more sense. let that be in your thought process, because you could literally not be part of the national anthem for the rest of your life going by that logic. But you could do more in a far shorter amount of time if you want to push for stronger, more aggressive direct action. And this could be a moment where that great level of direct action could take form. But do we have anyone in the millionaire class who is willing to step up and call for that action to happen? Because we need more genuine millionaire traders. It is your time to step up. You could be the change that gets us away from this capitalist hellscape. Or you could just go about doing your jobs like everyone else and not do anything more than just what you've been doing to get us out of this worsening status quo. Thanks so much to all of you tonight for joining me on tonight's episode of the Rochford Files with your host, Andrew Rochford. Please go like and share the stream. Try to share it to new people you don't know. Hopefully, get some new people in the mix on this channel. And yes, Kelly, that could be even someone who's in the upper six figures could be very instrumental in this moment. Thank you, Kelly. As for this weekend, I got a 3-day weekend coming up. So that means I will be off on Memorial Day. So I'll probably do something on. It just depends on my plans. I probably won't go live tomorrow. But I do think I will try to go live sometime Sunday. Then do something special for Monday since I'm off. With that being said, don't forget to go follow me on Twitter at NugLikeConrad. As you see on the screen, please go to the link tree that I have in the description to go follow my link to go follow and support me on the various platforms that I am on. And this is Andrew Rochford saying goodbye and good night.